to your average listener, they probably never even heard of the Fabian Society. And if you ask people even on the left of politics, they might think it's some kind of low-level think tank that has little groups around the country that meet up to discuss policy, sometimes doing slightly bigger conferences. But the reality is this is a behemoth, not only in terms of the individuals it's produced, but also the length of time it's been around. I mean, it's been around for 140 years or so. And it was essentially the group that founded the Labour Party. It was what we call a gradualist movement, which means they like Marxism, but they don't believe in revolution. So that basically means they want to do things slowly. And boy, have they succeeded. I mean, from the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, all the way through to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, all the way through to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. They have all of their best and brightest arrayed in these positions. And as you say, they have a very, very clear and stated mission statement. It's not something they keep hidden. They might be wolves in sheep's clothing, but I don't see much of the sheep's clothing. It's very much a mission to destroy the nation state and rebuild it piece by piece. And I think Tony Blair was one of their key assets in doing this. He was the guy who, of course, brought in things like the Supreme Court, the rule of law as an oath, which the Lord Chancellor takes, and I'm sure Stephen will go on to the meaning of that and why it's so important. But he really created a separation of powers. He began what I call the backdoor to cultural regicide, because, of course, Marxists love nothing more than beheading a king. And I think that's the best overview I can give to you right now.
I think that was a very consummate overview. Stephen, let's talk about the role that the lawyers are playing in this, because it seems to me that, yes, they sort of get people in top positions at the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of England, Number 10, Quangos. But when I look at the context of today and the project that many said that Tony Blair started, it largely seems to have been executed via legal structures. And what we have now is a Prime Minister whose excuse for everything is, well, that's just international law. Talk to me about how the Fabians have essentially built this edifice, which has essentially stripped the country of democracy and stripped those who really do wield power of any accountability.
Well, yes, and I wouldn't say it was all the law. It's been, and you're right to highlight international law, and something that your listeners and viewers might know of as international public law and human rights barristers and human rights lawyers. This is the clique that we are dealing with. The types of law that run the economy have largely been left untouched. But just so your listeners and viewers know, I believe that the Court of Appeal judge who heard the Bell Hotel Epping case should not have heard the case. I think we have a legal test called apparent bias, and I think it was more than satisfied on the six. I identify 6 reasons why he was too close to the government to hear the case. But he is also a Fabian, and I put in a complaint, which is all I have no more powers than a member of the public. So all we can do is to put in a complaint with the Judicial Conduct Office about the conduct of the judge, because he conducted himself badly by hearing a case when he probably shouldn't have heard it, because he at least gives the impression of apparent bias. And that complaint will be judged ultimately by Shabana Mahmood, who is linked to the Fabian Society. Oh. And the judge is a Fabian. So how am I to have any faith in that process? And which genius thought that having a secret society in Great Britain would in any way end up doing any form of good? The other thing I'd like to flag, because I think it gets missed, is that Orwell, who was a proper socialist, a proper lefty, he didn't like these people. And there's a reason why 1984 is 1984, because the Fabians are founded in 1884. And with their slow movement, he thought they'd get their way by 1984. Now, we've held them off. We've held them at bay. We've got to 2025. But by the skin of our teeth, we appear to be in the middle of something that is just not decent, moral, or good, or professional, or it seems to be some sort of cultish ideology. And it's a cult. Alex, I'd really like to highlight this. They're not the best lawyers. So it's really a leg up for the lawyers who are frankly a bit dim. I no longer feel the need to pull my punches on this, Alex. Years ago, I would never have said that. I would never have just been honest. But it's about time we had some honesty. If we don't have some brutal honesty, we're not going to get out of this. And it's generally a cult that offers the not very able and easy access to public life. And that I think is why the country is falling apart, because when you have non-merit based recruitment, your country actually ends up being pretty rubbish.
And now we've elected it in and they're going hell for leather, and we're going, isn't this weird? What's happened to Britain? I wonder what's going on. Who's behind this? Is it Bill Gates? Well, it's clear to me now that what's behind it is this society, who have in fact been extremely successful, I would say, in putting into place the instruments of their dystopian ideology. So this story has caught my eye. It's about child grooming in London, with reports that it is at catastrophic levels, in fact more catastrophic than anywhere else in the country. That's according to a care sector activist and an abuse survivor, Chris Wilde. Said grooming and criminal exploitation are rife in the capital, and it's being missed due to poor data sharing and underfunded services. Indeed, in the review by Baroness Louise Casey into rape gangs across England, they found a mismatch in the way that the Met Police and local authorities record child abuse. Now, if we know that there are rape gangs targeting children in other inner city areas, in other metropolitan boroughs, to the extent across the country that it has been, why is it that we don't seem to be finding such examples in London? I think that was a question well worth asking, which is a question that the leader of the Conservative group in the London Assembly, Susan Hall, put to the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, who also happens to be the Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, just watch his response. It will make your blood boil.
I asked you this question last week and you found every which way but not to answer it. Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
To avoid any misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes, if you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for you misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If you could spell it out, I can answer.
I've just spelt it out. Are you not listening? It's the sort of gangs that groom young girls at a young age for sex. Exactly how much clearer do you want me to be?
That makes me so livid I could cry. That disgusting human being who happens to be the Mayor of London, who also happens to hold the title of the Police and Crime Commissioner as part of that role, that responsibility, obfuscating, gaslighting, bullying, belittling. These are little girls, underage minors, being raped by gangs in our capital city. You do not play games over this. If this was anybody else in any other position of authority, that clip alone should have seen his head roll. London Mayor, you're a disgrace. You're disgusting. You do not deserve to be in that position, not when the welfare, the well-being, the dignity, the integrity, the safety and the innocence of children in the capital city is at stake. You are the most deplorable, despicable, horrible human being to answer that question like that. Now, you get back in that seat, you answer the question properly, you get the stats, you hold the police to account. That is what you're supposed to be doing. That is what I'm paying you to do. As someone who pays taxes, living in London, I should expect no less. The country should expect no less. You disgust me. Right, I've got that off my chest. Let's speak now to Emma Best, who is the Conservative Deputy Leader in the London Assembly. Emma, I mean, look, I cannot fathom how he has the audacity to sit there in mayoral question time and respond to what is an extremely serious and valid line of questioning from your leader on this most sensitive and important of subjects. I'm horrified. What did you make of all of that?
Yeah, good afternoon, Alex. And you speak not only for the whole of London, but the UK. That's the disgust that we all feel. Because what you've seen from the Casey report, what you've seen from reports over the weekend is exactly what we feared when you look at and hear those testimonials from those poor girls across the country, and you look at the elements to how those cases were allowed to rear their head, you could only see that we were likely to have issues like that in London. We had failing authorities. We had a Met Police service that was scared to be called racist. We had the profile of those victims across the capital. We knew we were likely to have it. It's such a serious issue. I wouldn't begin to speculate as to why the mayor thought it was acceptable to respond in that way. All I can say, it was absolutely unacceptable. This is a really serious case. These are people's lives, not just past victims. We probably have current victims as well.
I've always had serious doubts that Angela Rayner, who comes from very self-admittedly, and she goes on and on about this, an extremely poor background, tough upbringing, they had no money at all. We know all the jobs she's ever had. She's never been in a highly paid job. So how the hell did she amass all the capital that was needed in order to get a mortgage on an 800 grand second home? And she's a politically exposed person, a PEP, which makes it even harder to get a mortgage. So, you know, the threshold for that would have been pretty high. And I've always thought that there was something very curious about that. Now we know that she effectively sold her stake in what she now admits freely is her family home, her main home, in order to fund the deposit on the Hove house. Again, I mean, maybe nothing wrong with that. Although the reason when we came back on air, Alex, that I was looking down and you caught me as if I was reading my WhatsApps, I wasn't. I got rather excited about a headline in the Telegraph, which is quite juicy. Rayner used disabled sons' NHS compensation to buy second home.
What?
Let me just repeat that for you. Rayner used disabled sons' NHS compensation to buy second home.
So this gets even trickier, because first of all, she said she had to put that house in a trust because that would pay for her son's medical care. We don't have many details over the condition.
Just to correct you there, what she actually said, because I read the whole statement, I'm sure you did too, was that she put it in a trust in order to ensure that he had the stability to live there forever. Because of his condition, it's right that he's always able to stay there. Well, fair enough, but I think, reading between the lines, what she's actually trying to do there is avoid inheritance tax. That is my...
Right, yeah. But this is what I'm saying. There's compensation that has been given, which in theory should have, enabled this boy to be looked after, and she's actually using that to buy this other home.
Yes,
it's all...
That is effectively... I mean, she hasn't directly... I haven't read the Telegraph story, by the way, because we're on air and it's only broken. And I'm sure our own newspapers, The Sun, are going to have some great stuff on this tomorrow. They've led the way on this story in many regards. But that is effectively what she's done, it seems to me, is the family got a lump of money after the son suffered from what I assume was an avoidable birth, an accident at birth. Absolutely horrific, tragic, quite right that there was compensation given. And that money has then been in effect used to buy out, to sell off the property that they're currently in, the family are in, her stake in it, and she's used what she's gained from selling that stake to buy the property in Hove. I mean, look, if all this sounds really complicated, it is, and that's the problem with it. If you are a senior politician, whether or not, even if you're just an MP, whenever you're contemplating doing something like this, you've got to ask yourself, how is this going to look? And, this is something that every responsible parliamentarian has to think about all the time. And honestly, yes, it's a bit of a pain. It's got to be said, it's a downside of the job. You can't do the kind of, let's call it tax optimization, because there's no suggestion that she really broke the law at this stage. That, I suppose someone might say that later on. But what she's done is tried to be incredibly tax efficient. Again, nothing wrong with that. I'm personally not in favour of volunteering to pay way more tax than you have to a government that routinely wastes it. The problem is she is that government.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she the one that is presiding over the highest taxes in 70 years. Her government is presiding over ruinous inheritance taxes. Her government is presiding over a clampdown on people who own more than one property. So sorry, this does not fly.
If you and I, Peter, if you and I decided we wanted to get a little group of us together outside the cathedral in Westminster, that beacon of Christianity and Catholicism in our capital city over the Easter period, and have conduct some sort of lectures about, from the book of Roger Scruton, and talk about the wonderful nature of Britain and how important Christianity is to it, and we put some tents up, do you reckon we'd have been allowed to stay there?
I think we'd have been bounced out before the first peg hit the floor. That's the reality of it.
Right. So does it surprise you though that it wasn't me and you and the Catholics of this country at Easter outside Westminster Cathedral? No, there are a load of men peeing there, sleeping on the floor, in tents, all over the flower beds. And guess what they were? Illegal migrants. Of course, they get to stay. They get to defile our streets, our gardens, our beautiful public buildings. They don't get moved on because, they're some sort of beatified, brave men who have broken the law, broken into this country somehow. I mean, if these people were so poor, if they were so deprived and down and impoverished, I'm not saying they haven't gone through perilous journeys and they don't come from rubbish countries, but if they really were the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weaks, how do they afford the thousands of pounds they give to the people traffickers?
The reality is they don't. They end up working in illegal markets over here, again, selling drugs, committing crime, making our streets unsafe. That's how they pay it back. It's a full circle and full service, package that these people smugglers offer to them. And unfortunately, yes, again, it is the native people of this country that have to sit there and be quiet, because otherwise you're a racist or you're a xenophobe or you're this or you're that or something or you're other. And basically it's shut up and be quiet and just hand over some money. And do you know what? There's going to get to this point now with all these stories that there is going to be a snapping point. And it's going to make the summer riots look like child's play. And, the crackdown on that will be more significant, yet again fueling the problem. Because, yes, this government will not admit that it is a part and parcel of the problem and refuses to do anything to fix it. I mean, this story is staggering, but just to wind it back a moment, can we just all agree that the stain of homelessness in this country is morally just there are no words to describe it. Over 354,000 homeless people in England alone. 161,000 are children, and over nearly 6% of that are veterans. How is that possible?
Right.
We're the 7th largest economy in the world.
This is the mad thing.
But
during COVID, it was deemed that the homeless men and women of this country were a public health crisis. So they all had to be put in hotels. Good, they're our people. Yeah. We live in a society, we're a developed world. We have a moral backbone to our society. We've got a welfare system. If our people, I don't care if they've come from trauma or have taken drugs, they're ours. We should be looking after them. That is what a decent, civilised society does. And during COVID, we put them in hotels. And now we've washed our hands of them. We've turned our backs because people who want to lord it up in a 4-star hotel, delivering food on the black market for their extra money, putting their videos on TikTok, with their pound notes, look at my life, isn't it great? Here's me doing a rap video. You get on a boat too. You can get a PlayStation, live in a hotel. I don't like the meals. I've got no Wi-Fi. They get the red carpet rolled out. Anyone who is our duty to care for is just left to rot.
Yeah. And that's the great word for it, left to rot. Because let's not forget, even though they get given all this stuff, they still kick up a fuss. Because don't forget, back in June 2023, there was a huge kind of walkout in the hotels in Pimlico, a particularly expensive part of London, I would mind, you know, where they said that the rooms weren't adequate enough. You know, there's a series of hotel rooms that cost the taxpayer over £54,000 a year just to keep a migrant in it. You know, and I don't expect in grovelling hands and knees, thank you, you know, because again, we're a decent country, we have morals, and it's what we do. However, a little bit of, you know, thanks, you know, wouldn't go a long way. And decency and respect is what I demand, because the way they behaved outside of that church, could you imagine the outcry if it was say a more right-wing leaning group outside of a mosque? Could you imagine? We'd have been having a very different conversation right now. We'd be talking about people and prison sentences.
But you know what the left would say?
Reality of it.
You know what the left would say, though, Peter? The left would say that we are scapegoating migrants, that we're xenophobes, that these are poor men who all they're trying to do is find themselves a better life, and we're not being good enough, which is why they've had to resort to essentially sleeping rough. That's what they'd say that we're doing, that we're the monsters here, that we're trying to stir up and incite hatred and division in our society. But the thing is, right, regardless of whether that's someone's opinion or not, what we have seen in other countries, in Ireland, in America, where one tent becomes 10 tent, becomes a street of tent, becomes these tent cities, is guess what? It does lead to insurrection. It does lead to people going, this is enough. I don't want to walk down the street of this fair city that I used to call home, that my ancestors built, and have to go past this every day. This is not what a functioning society looks like. I've got no power to do anything about it. So whether one comes down on the side of sympathy, or whether one comes down on the side of I'm fed up of people who can just break into a country at will and just, you know, set up shop here, doesn't matter. The point is, the pragmatic point is, a lot of people in society are so sick to the back teeth that this is going to escalate into far bigger problems, and no one's doing anything about it.
I just want to thank everyone for coming here today. We're all local people. We're all good, local, tax-paying people. We don't want trouble. We don't want fights. My question would be, why, and all due respect to the police, why are you allowing agitators to come and fight against us? Because you are inciting violence. We're not. You are. Mr. Starmer, I hope you're going to hear, I hope you hear this. Why are you letting 500-600 undocumented men come across the channel every day into this country? We don't know who they are. We don't know what their background is, but they don't share our values. They don't respect women, and they do not respect children.
Yes! Yes! She's got a point.
I saw that lady's speech in full.
Yeah.
It was on social media yesterday. She is incredibly reasoned. She's very calm. She's very much in control of what she's saying. And she delivered to an audience who entirely bought into everything that she was saying.
Yeah.
She was a voice of reason.
Yeah.
She is a voice who some lunatics in this Labour government would doubtlessly brandish as being some kind of far-right thug, when she is in fact just a very reasonable woman expressing her concerns about her local community, which is being tarnished. And that is what led, in recent days, to so many people turning out onto the streets to protest about the Bell Hotel in Epping, which is chock-a-block full of people that we don't know where they've come from, we don't know their backgrounds, we don't know what their intentions are, and one of their number has been charged, so I won't say very much more about that case, but has been charged in relation to an unpleasant assault on a child, a female
Well, it's
child,
one
a
of
girl.
three, allegedly.
A girl, yes. So people are rightfully irritated.
I read in the Mail today, and we can't talk about it too much, but I assume if it's been in another newspaper, I suppose we can say something on what's already in the public domain. But quite what this person is supposed to have said to these girls, following schoolgirls down the road. And it makes your stomach turn. And but the point is this, you know, it's interesting reading some of the editorials, how far that Overton window has shifted, because a lot of people out there in the commentariat on the right wing are saying,
Well, what do you expect? Of course people are upset. When it comes to women and girls, little girls being harassed by young men who have come from countries where you can snatch up a child bride as long as she's had her first bleed or whatever, who think that women should be dressed up like ghosts, shouldn't even be able to show an ankle, should have a male escort. When they come to the UK and they get bombarded, first of all, on their free smartphones in their hotels with their good Wi-Fi, stable Wi-Fi connection, when they get bombarded with the likes of Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips and all this fetishised idea of Western girls, then they see the schoolgirls coming out who are all told by society they've got to look like a Kardashian. It sounds like a dreadful thing to say, but, well, actually, this is the headline that I was talking about in the Daily. It's not a dreadful thing to say, but what did they think would happen?
Yeah.
This is what I've said for so long. What did people in positions of power think would happen if a load of young men who are going to be highly sexed because they've been living in a tent in France suddenly get a hotel, who are from countries where they have very misogynistic attitudes, where women are dressed up like they're, I don't know, some sort of Pentium processor adverts.
Well, they're hidden. They're not dressed up. They're
hidden.
They're hidden from view.
And that, you know, to not do so is an act of shame, where you can marry Lord knows who for, you know, 7 cows at whatever age she is. Then you bring them here, where teenage girls are wont to drink, you know, cider on a park bench, you know, leave the school gate and put their lippy on and roll up their school skirts. We all did that at the age of 14 because we didn't know any better. We're not wise to the world. And then those two cultures collide. What do they think is going to happen, for crying out loud?
And should those young women so choose, they may be scantily clad, beautifully turned out, and of course they are seen, I think, by so many of these people from entirely different cultures, as you've so expertly described. They are alien to these men. It, of course, is not going to end well. But what's happened in Epping is merely a reflection of what is happening the length and breadth of the country. Hundreds of these men are being parachuted into these hotels.
I wish it was only hundreds, it's thousands.
Yeah, but I mean into a hotel.
Into one hotel, yeah.
We'll have hundreds of men in that hotel, and this is replicated throughout the country. There is so much disquiet about this. There is anger, understandable anger. Imagine working all your life, okay, to be able to afford your nice home in a nice part of Essex like Epping or anywhere else in the country.
So you can send your daughter to a nice school, not in inner city London, and then you find out she's being trailed from the school gates by some dirty creep.
Now, wouldn't you be livid?
Yeah.
I've got 3 sons. If I had a daughter, I can only hazard a guess at how enraged I would be, and you can guarantee that I would be on the streets. I would want something done, and we have a governments, including the past lamentable Tories, who have repeatedly, for a very long time, done nothing about this. Absolutely nothing.
Worse than that, they have demonised and gaslit people who even had a glimmer of concern. And this is the other thing, this sort of demand to have empirical evidence. I'm glad we're finally getting crime statistics by nationality. I am glad we're now being able to say there is a case in point here. I had someone contact me about whistleblowing from a particular police force in the country, and I won't say which, but they have discovered that over 70% of the perpetrators of sex attacks in that police force's records are from foreign men. Over 70%. Now, I remember saying this. You and I went viral, didn't we? When I brought it up, back in the days when we were downstairs on talk, and I had my show with Kev, and I said, there's a problem here with men who discernibly are not from this country, and the way they treat women in this country, and it exploded all over the internet, because at the time I think I might have been the first to actually come out and say it, because it was the thing you weren't allowed to say, but it was patently obvious. And I don't know why, as women, we need to now point out statistics, point to statistics and say, look, we need these things published by nationalities so the government will listen. Of course, if you bring men from a medieval misogynistic culture and stick them in hyper-sexualised 21st century Britain, they're gonna go tonto. Yes. Of course they are. What do you think happens? They magically cross the channel and get chemically castrated en route by the sea air?
Or
of course that doesn't happen.
Or enlightened into first world thinking, respect for women, and everything that goes along with it. No.
Doing some digging, Kev. You're going to like this. I was sitting on the tube coming into work today, coming from further out than before, because as you know, I've moved into pastures new.
I know.
Yeah, got a different commute these days.
Welcome to the home-owning classes, yeah.
Yeah, for now. A matter of time before that's snatched off me and some sort of mygos are put in it. But I was doing a little bit of research, because I've said before on this show, there's something funny going on down Bournemouth. That Bournemouth beach is always popping up in the newspapers. People seem to be getting sexually assaulted, raped. Those are the things that make the press. Those are the reports that we know about, not all the levels of harassment and leering and the things that go unreported. And I thought, I'm going to dig in and see if I can find any statistics. And I thought to myself, probably not going to be able to do this, but let's see anyway. Yeah. So I Googled, how many rapes have there been in Bournemouth? And someone's done an FOI on this, haven't they? Turns out, so get this. There have been more than 100 rapes in Bournemouth every year in the past 2 years. That's a rape almost every 3 days. When you then add on all the other sexual offences, so let's take 2022 as a snapshot, 105 rapes, 143 sexual assaults, 19 exposures and voyeurism, and 19 which fell into other sexual offences, whatever they may be, meaning 286 sexual offences in 2022, which is almost one every day and a half or something like that. Now, you can dig down, because I was like, I wonder if it's those 3 hotels with the men lurking around from other countries who are behind some of these statistics. And I thought, well, the best way of doing this is to compare 2 figures from the pre-small boats days.
Yeah.
So I did that, didn't I? Yeah. And it's fewer than 50% of those statistics in 2022. It's half the amount of reported incidents. So either the men of Bournemouth have suddenly become promiscuous randy without any bounds of fear, or our new residents in those hotels are up to things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. Yes, you've got 3 hotels, 3 lovely seaside hotels that the local £1.3 billion a year tourist industry is being wrecked by. This is the Roundhouse Hotel, the Chine Hotel, and the Britannia Hotel. Always the Britannia, right? Everybody, never stay in a Britannia hotel. Mostly you won't be allowed to, because they've sold their souls to the asylum seeker crisis. But if on the off chance you can get a room in a Britannia House hotel, don't. Now, here's the thing. So your statistics are shocking. I've got something that's going to shock you even more. Last night, one of my better ideas, I don't have many, as you know, but I started the show. I thought, well, let's, all these sex crimes that we are hearing are being committed allegedly by asylum seekers. Let's try to get together a list around the country. Now, bearing in mind that when these sex crimes are allegedly committed, these are all charges, the local communities, British citizens, don't get to find out that they're allegedly committed by asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Residents of their local asylum seeker hotels. So these are the list we got together. Nobody knew that these were asylum seekers, right?
Right.
So I got my top team to start compiling this list. We gave up at 50. And so I began my show last night by literally reading every single one of the top 50, the bottom 50, if you like, of these sex crimes around Britain. When we say, you and I have said this a lot, we say, look, here's the problem. We are letting in thousands of men about whom we know nothing in from cultures who have very different attitudes to women. What are we finding out now? We are also letting in men from cultures who have very different attitudes to children. This is an urgent crisis. The government's got to get to grips. This is
disgusting. I honestly, I am lost for words. I don't know what to say. The idea of one of these monsters abusing, assaulting, scaring, destroying the life of one of our little kids. Just honestly, I can't.
I don't want to pile it on for you, Alex, but I cited one case. This was only in court. This guy's in court this week at the Inner London Crown Court. He denies the charges. He is a Pakistani asylum seeker living in Streatham in South London, charged with the repeated rape of an 8-year-old girl. You know, this is, and we've got to do something. This government cannot sit around letting this happen.
How dare they?
We are beginning.
It's the blood is on their hands. If they can't protect children in our society, they have no right to use our taxes to pay for anything. They should all be standing in the blimmin' Hague, as far as I'm concerned. Every single last one of them. I hope you don't mind me throwing a little curveball at you tonight, and by all means tell me to button it. I'm sniffing down the wrong wormhole. But I've started. There's been a little buzz on X lately amongst various commentariat about the Fabian Society, so I started digging around and finding out who's members, what they stand for, and it seems to me that this Fabian Society pretty much accounts for every single person in the cabinet, the unelected, unaccountable Attorney General, the first Attorney General ever to not actually be a sitting MP, this Lord Bean, who was the one who presided over the court ruling that said that actually the Epping Forest Migrant Hotel must stay open, and the rights of the so-called asylum seekers trump those of the domestic population. And then you've got this Manoush Shafiq, who at one point was big in LSE, which again seems to be a feeding ground and a sort of a training school, a grooming college for Fabians. And I'm beginning to think, is this worth digging into?
Well, I don't know much about the Fabian Society, except that it's some sort of lefty intellectual kind of group. Why would I want to know more about it? Really, as far as I'm concerned, that's enough to rule it out of being anything that I want to have anything to do with. But yeah, maybe you're right. You know, maybe this is the new kind of hotbed of talent to this appalling government. And maybe if we looked at the other members and other people that hang out at Fabian Society events, we might see some more future cabinet ministers. I don't know.
Oh, I've been doing a bit of digging while I was on the train coming down here, and it turns out that, you know, like I said, pretty much everybody in the cabinet is a member of the Fabian Society. Tony Blair loved a bit of that. There's Lord Bean, Lord Hermer, and so I said, okay, what does it do? What does it stand for? What's kind of sinister about this? So I was looking into some of their reports, and there were reports saying we need to have open borders. Open borders are the best thing in the world. We need to distribute. It's quite radical left stuff. It's not just a little bit of, oh, we're a little bit cuddly and wouldn't it be nice for the NHS? No. Some of it is pretty hard line. And Tony Blair was all up in that. Gordon Brown was all up in that. And I think there is something in it. And what's quite harrowing, right, is their emblem is a wolf in sheep's clothing, because they say we want radical left-wing overhaul gradually, inevitably, by the dismantling and reshaping of institutions and not by revolution. They say that out loud, and they actually have the symbol, creepy symbol of a wolf in a sheep's clothing. I'm like, this is sinister.
Now you've got me interested.
There you are, girl.
You should have started off about the secret society whose symbol is the wolf in sheep's clothing, and then I think we'd have all known where you were going with this. That is fascinating, actually, and I'm going to actually have to do some of my own digging, methinks, now you've told me that.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm digging around at the moment to write a Substack on it. I'm sniffing about. There's lots of people actually at the moment active on X doing bits and bobs on this, and I'm like, bring it on. I want all of the evidence. I want to grab it all together because there's something here. Every single Labour leader and Labour Prime Minister has been in this society. Tony Blair's, the creation of the Supreme Court, all of this stuff is all connected to their ideas, and it goes back to sort of the 1800s, 1880 or something, this Fabian society espousing global socialism, and they're all in it. They all want it, and they all want to do it brick by brick, cog by cog, you know, and do it in a way that we don't notice. And they say this stuff out loud. The problem is you're already having to live your life every single minute, every single hour, with the distinct possibility that if you don't take preventative measures, if you don't take precautions, then those things will happen. And that is utterly ghoulish. It almost makes life not worth living, which is why I'm leaving. I ain't living in London anymore. I'm getting out. I've had enough.
Well, look, if people like you, Alex, are with street smart and sassy, you know your way around London and what have you, if you're leaving, actually what's happening is we're hollowing out London, leaving effectively tourists in the middle, and then you become like a tourist hotspot like anywhere, where there's always been pickpockets in Barcelona and places like that, and with signs everywhere. And we're getting back to the New York of the 70s and 80s, when you absolutely have to grasp it, and the mayor is doing anything but grasp it.
Well, that is the difficulty, because it seems to me he obfuscates, he bangs on diversity is our strength. Even the ULEZ scheme, we know that this is essentially hollowing out London, the empty shops everywhere. How on earth what's happened to Oxford Street has happened? Like I said, when I first moved to London over a decade ago, at the weekend, something to do would be to get into town and just bimble about the high street, essentially. Go in and out of House of Fraser, John Lewis, that big top shop, bit of window shopping. It was an activity. You go to Oxford Street now, and unless you want to buy something from a candy shop or a vape, there's absolutely nothing to do. What should be our flagship shopping street is a disgrace.
You see a lot of people in Oxford Street that are hanging around but not spending money, so it's hardly surprising that any retailers can survive there, and it's left to the candy stores, as you rightly say. And again, the whole point about safety in London is safety in numbers. Whether it's on the tube, on the high street, if you've got a lot of people around, you're going to feel safer. But if you're just hollowing it out, as we've been talking about, whether it's tourists or whether it's just after a particular time because, the nightlife is dying on its feet, that it's hard to get a drink after a particular time, then people, especially women, are going to feel really unsafe in the middle of London. And that's something we've just got to reverse.
I have had awful experiences in London. I've had Islamist intimidation, threats. I've spent a lot of time in successful Muslim countries, especially Abu Dhabi, over the last 20 years. I have never for 1 second experienced the kind of vile fanaticism and Islamist intimidation in those Muslim countries as I have in the streets of England. The government have got something wrong here. If I first experienced it in 2001 when I lived in the Tower Hamlets.
Gosh, that was a brave thing to do.
It was. I had no idea. I was just, a young girl from an English town, and suddenly that move to the Tower Hamlets, my eyes were like, oh my gosh, I didn't realise there were parts of England like this. I was spat on for wearing shorts, heckled by men in Islamist wear with foreign accents. So I'm not talking, ordinary, wonderful British Muslims who just get by like you and I and want to get on. It's a specific kind of religious fanaticism that has crept onto our streets. And we moved from the Tower Hamlets because I didn't find it a particularly pleasant place to live back then. Maybe it's changed. Moved to West London.
To something that's even more unrecognisable.
Moved to West London, and I had a really horrible incident. I was walking to pick up my daughters from school in a big mum T-shirt, big mum shorts, halfway down to the knees, and on my own, and two men came striding up to me, cornered me, wouldn't let me pass, both again in Islamic dress, with very, very foreign accents, shouting at me that I was not wearing the dress code appropriate for their area. And I tried to pass, they wouldn't let me pass, they just kept shouting at me, calling me names. And I'm a tough cookie, Alex, right? I am a really tough cookie. I burst into tears. I just felt really scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know when they were going to let me pass. I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, what is happening? This is my home, and there's been a culture shift in some areas, and I called the police. I called the police because I thought this is not something I want my daughters to have to face, because this was a road just by my house. And I called the police, and their response to me, I felt, was as scary as what had happened.
Why? What happened?
They sent round a gentleman who kept reminding me that he was Muslim, not in a way where he was in a kind of happy and nice way, but as more, I felt very much like I've got to be careful what I say and how I address this and how I speak about it. And I felt like I was being interviewed a little bit. And I was explaining to him how worried I was that this was sort of creeping onto the streets near where I lived, and that I had 4 daughters, and there must be CCTV cameras, and there must be some way of finding out who these guys were. And in the end, all I got from the police was, we'll talk to the local imam and get him to chat with the congregation, and I thought, and it really shocked me. I thought, hang on, this isn't how it's supposed to.
You've been spat on, blocked in your passage, intimidated, threatened by foreign men, and then the police have the audacity to essentially question you.
So what frightened me as well, especially the hearing about the horrific grooming gang scandal up and down the country, which is, I think, the worst thing that children of this country have been through, you know, certainly in my lifetime. That climate of fear for girls and young women to report crimes by certain communities, you know, the authorities have created that, whereas I feel like somehow I'm being the bad person. We're the wrong kind of victims. We won't be treated in the same way.
What's so terrifying, I find, is the way that they're brainwashing and gaslighting girls today. Look, it's part of human nature to pattern form, to risk assess, to sort of think that, you know, when these things happen, you put it together and you go, right, in future, that could represent a danger. And young girls today are being made to regard everybody who's come over on a small boat as some sort of hero who deserves our love and respect and our attention. Any man who wants to come into the toilet as wearing a frock as, again, someone who is, you know, the next best thing to a saint. Basically being asked to deconstruct all of those normal reactions that provide safety, you know, being brainwashed into disregarding the hair standing up on the back of their neck. It's so dangerous. It's so misogynistic. It's so wicked.
But I do find the liberal left deeply misogynistic. They actually, you know, tend to be more the Islamist apologists, the big supporters of men having access to women's changing rooms, safe spaces, sports, you know, allowing men to redefine what a woman is. It's all from that sort of liberal left side who parade about as if they are the next Messiah and as the saints. And actually, I don't think women are doing too well under them at all. And the other people I feel for is very much, you know, migrant women as well, Muslim women in their communities as well. You know, may not feel like they get the same amount of attention and response from the authorities.
Well, it's worth noticing, actually, that when it came to some of these grooming gangs, like the ones in Oldham, the whistleblowers were the daughters of the perpetrators. They were the women from the community who said enough is enough. We don't want to have this going on.